Hey everyone, I'm Nick Pettit at NickRP on Twitter, and I'm a teacher here at Treehouse, which of course is a great way to learn how to make websites, phone apps, games, and VR applications. We're also doing a really cool new thing called a tech degree, which you can check out at teamtreehouse.com/tech degree, and it's a rigorous curriculum that you can complete in about 6 to 12 months that will prepare you for a new career in technology. So you'll build projects, build up your portfolio. It's really, really cool. So check it out at teamtreehouse.com/tech degree. Today, I'm here with Aisha. How you doing, Aisha?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Doing well. Aisha is a front-end developer and a teacher at Grand Circus in Detroit. Is that right?
Yes.
Good. Got that right. So today, I actually don't want to talk about technology as much as I want to talk about careers and confidence and kind of trace your journey into the technology industry and kind of understand how you got to where you're at today. So let's just like rewind and start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
Sure. So actually, I grew up mostly in Tampa, Florida, and was born in New Jersey. I kind of bring that out when it's convenient. But spent most of my life up until college in Tampa.
Okay, right on. So what was your childhood like? Like, where'd you go to school? And I guess maybe a better question would be, when did you first start to notice technology in your life?
So, funny story, I tell this when I teach version control, but way back when I was a user on Neopets, I realized that you could change the web pages that were associated with your pets and your store and all of that. And that is actually how I started to teach myself HTML and CSS.
It's very important stuff to maintain your Neopets page and kind of, you know, for personal branding. And all right, getting off topic here. So you started messing around with these Neopet pages. How did you learn about HTML and CSS? Did you just start like hacking on that? I mean, I'm actually not familiar with the HTML and CSS of Neopets.
That's fair.
Was it something you could easily access, or did you go somewhere else to start learning about that?
It was actually pretty easy. I don't really remember how it started, but you could edit your pages, and it was very, very clear how to do that. And so in figuring that out, the next step was, okay, there are all of these other users who are providing themes, essentially. Sort of like, at the time, I equated that with like MySpace themes.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I have seen this sort of thing before, but I have no idea what it means. I remember thinking like, I will never understand that.
Right.
And so over time, I started, noticing, okay, well, I can change this color if I make this little change. And it just went from there. I started figuring out more and more like how to change the parts of the pages that I wanted, and went from there. Gotcha.
So did you do anything immediately after that, or was that just kind of like, because I remember when I was first learning about websites, I started using Front Page, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. They had this tool that you could just drag out a table, and then I could put stuff where I wanted it on the page, which is like terrible practice, by the way. You shouldn't use tables for layout, right? That's a well-known thing now, but at the time, that was the only way to do it. So I was like dragging out tables and just like putting in images, and I was like, this is so cool, because as 11-year-old Nick, I was like, wow, here's a tiny part of my life I have some control over.
Yep.
Yep. And it was a means of expression. So it's interesting that you had like a similar experience with Neopets. But so you did that, but was that something you continued with, where you're like, wow, this HTML CSS thing is really, really cool, and then start doing other things? Or did it just kind of go away for a while and didn't reemerge until later on?
Yeah, so it was kind of always a thing in the back of my mind, but I wasn't sure how to break into web development. I didn't even know that that was a term
Right.
for a long time.
Right.
And so when I went to college, and the degree I actually wound up getting was in information science, which was helpful. It was definitely helpful now that I look back on it. But at the time I was like, I'm not learning to make websites. What's happening? And so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do for a career, even after I finished that degree. It wasn't until I moved to Detroit, actually, that I started to really move towards working as a professional web developer.
So where did you go to school? You said you got a degree in information science?
Information science.
Information science. What does that even mean? I'm not sure.
That's an excellent question. Yeah, it's very much like computer science.
Okay.
And I went to school in Manhattan at Fordham University, Lincoln Center campus. And I loved it. It was amazing. And I definitely learned a lot. And I'm starting now to really appreciate like all of the things that I learned about databases and sort of more the back end. Because up to this point, I've really been very, very focused on the front end web development.
Gotcha. Yeah, I have similar feelings about college. Like I got a degree in digital media, and like 10 years later, I'm only just now starting to understand what that even means. So but yeah, no, I totally identify. So you went to school in Manhattan. What brought you up to Manhattan? Anything in particular? Or?
Actually, my family is from New York.
Oh, okay.
Like both sides, both my parents were born near the city. And I've always loved it. I love theater. I actually went into college thinking, maybe I'll be a theater major.
I went into college thinking I was going to make movies. So yeah. I totally understand.
So that was what led me to Fordham. And it was just kind of a good vibe. I just really love the campus.
Yeah, that's most of what I got out of college was, making friends and partying, and that's why the degree is only just now starting to set in. Like, so you went to school in Manhattan, and then you came out of school. Like right after you came out of school, like what were you thinking? Like what I guess I should say, what were your career prospects? Like,
Sure.
What was your next move?
So Fordham is a Jesuit university, and I kind of learned what that meant after I started going to Fordham. And I got really involved with a program called Global Outreach, which is based on the same 4 core values as the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, which is what I wound up doing immediately after college. I was actually placed at Detroit Christ Rey High School in Detroit. And so I spent the first year out of college working there full time.
Okay, cool. What was that like?
It was hard. One of the things that they say when you go through the program is that you are ruined for life. And that is very true. It's very much about being in solidarity with the people that you're serving. And so we got very close to each other, as a cohort of volunteers, and to the people that in the communities that we were serving. And that was really, really hard, but it was also beautiful and like empowering and so many other amazing things. And that's why I wound up staying in Detroit.
That's really cool. So what types of things what types of subject matter were you dealing with there?
Sure. So I was actually working in their corporate work study program. And so I wasn't teaching. I had no expectations of teaching.
Right.
I was more focused on like, okay, how are the students doing at work? Because in this sort of type of schooling, it's a whole network of schools. The students pay in part for their education. It's private, Catholic, college preparatory education by working. They work at, hospitals and law firms and universities, and they learn these really important professional skills, but they're also able to kind of give back and put actual money into their education, which is really cool. So I was working in the office that coordinated all of that, and then at some point kind of ended up being the advisor for a group of young girls who were learning web development and robotics.
So all that Neopets knowledge started to come into play.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, I did not have any teaching knowledge. And so I was kind of like, what do I do? And so that led me to reach out to the Girl Develop It chapter in Detroit, who, they saved my life, actually. My life, my sanity, everything. And then that led to even more opportunities. It's just kind of like a big, awesome snowball.
So you started teaching these young girls, and you said you were teaching them web development. You said, I think you were teaching them robotics as well?
Yeah.
Was there any kind of like crossover there, or?
No, it was like the first half of the year was web development. Second half of the year is robotics. It's actually a program that's run through the Michigan Council of Women in Technology.
Okay. So you went to Girl Develop It?
Correct.
That's right. Tell me more about that.
Sure. So Girl Develop It is a national nonprofit, and we really aim to make it accessible and affordable for women to learn to code. We run workshops all through the year, and they're usually aimed at beginners. We do have some intermediate offerings as well, depending on the chapter. But there are, I think, 54 chapters across the country right now.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a really, really, really awesome organization. I love it so much.
So did you just go to like a meetup, or like how did you find out about it?
So I actually took my first GDI course in New York in maybe 2011. So it was pretty early on. The organization's maybe 5 or 6 years old now. And I loved it. I loved the atmosphere. I loved the people that I met. And so when I realized that there was a chapter in Detroit already, I was like, oh my God, it's my people.
Right.
Like, I've got to reach out to them and like try to get something going, even though I felt like I didn't know anything and like I didn't have any money. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing at all.
So you became more involved with them in some regard? Like, because you reached out to them for help, but then you got a lot more involved, right?
Absolutely. So I reached out and I was basically like, please, I'll do whatever you need. Just like teach me how to teach people.
Right.
And they did. I got a message back from Erica Carlson, who is one of the co-founders of that chapter. And she was like, we would be happy to have you. She like let me come sit in on a class. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I need to get involved. And so from then on, anytime that I possibly could, I was a TA for them. I started, thinking about starting to teach, maybe doing like one workshop. And I think my first workshop for a GDI that I taught was web accessibility, like later that year, which would have been 2014.
Gotcha.
And I loved it. I loved everything about the organization and the people. And now I serve as one of the co-leaders for the Detroit chapter.
That's amazing. That's really, really cool. So, because I'm a teacher too, obviously, right? And so I feel like whenever I have to teach something, I learn it so much better than if I were just like kind of doing it. So you feel that way too? Or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think teaching is like the best way to learn, honestly.
I mean, and you don't even have to necessarily be like a formal teacher. I feel like a lot of times if you're just sharing your knowledge with other people, it really reinforces that knowledge quite a lot. That's something we encourage on Treehouse, is for people to get into the community and answer other people's questions, because it really is a pretty great way to learn. So what are you doing right now?
Excellent question. So up until this past Friday, I was a full-time employee at Grand Circus. I am still teaching for them part-time because I really love Grand Circus and I really love teaching. But I'm actually looking for a position as a developer right now.
Gotcha. So I guess beyond teaching, have you done anything else with front-end development, or like what are your goals there going forward?
Sure. So I've done some freelance work, but I'm really trying to ramp that up now, and start doing larger projects now that I have a little more time.
Sure.
I'm also doing a lot of conferences. So attending conferences, volunteering, speaking, and trying to learn as much as I can while I have this time.
So what's the rest of your life like? Because I mean, part of this, like, I want to try to put a real human face on technology, because a lot of times I think, especially for tech degree students at Treehouse, they can sometimes feel a little bit isolated, like they're the only ones in the world that are coding. So like, what are your hobbies or interests or family life like?
Sure. So I have a really super nerdy boyfriend who has helped open up these facets of my own nerdiness that I didn't know existed. And so we just built my first gaming computer.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's where I live. So that's super cool.
It's been pretty great. Up until then, I was very much a console type of person. I had my Xbox 360 with me for like years and years now. But yeah, so I'm starting to get into PC gaming too. I'm rehabbing a house in Detroit that I got from an auction.
Awesome.
Which is like...
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
That's so much work, so much time. It's moving along though. I'm really hoping to live in it soon. That'll be great.
Yeah.
So many things. I really love dogs, like so much that it hurts, but I do not have one.
Oh man. Oh yeah, that's the worst. See, I love dogs too, but we have a cat that like totally does not get along with dogs. So we're getting another cat instead. Yeah, we're just kind of...
It's totally backwards. What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. So, do you feel like you faced any kind of challenges in getting to where you're at today? Do you feel like, like growing up was hard, or just learning was hard, or anything like that?
So growing up, I was actually super, super, super lucky to have a mother who was really, really involved in technology. She spent her whole 30-year career at IBM and like started off as an engineer.
That's
like
pretty crazy. My mom was at IBM too, actually.
Oh yeah? Hey.
Yeah. In Florida. Maybe they work together. Who knows?
She could have.
It's a small world after all.
Yeah, she, so from the beginning, she was always kind of like super into tech, just in general. And that put it on my radar, at least at a really young age. And, anything I wanted to do, my parents are both super supportive. And so that was amazing. I think where I started to run into some difficulties was as I started to get older and like moving into the workforce and coming up against situations and people that that definitely made me feel unwelcome in the industry. And I think, that's the experience of a lot of women, a lot of people of color. It's definitely hard, particularly when you don't see a lot of people in the industry who look like you or have a similar background. It makes it hard to feel like there's a place for you.
Totally.
And so part of what I do with Girl Develop It and through a lot of the talks that I give is just kind of giving people some concrete ways to start moving past that in their own lives, in their own companies, so that there are fewer instances of bias in the industry, and so that people kind of have a way to talk about it, because I think most of it is unconscious.
Yeah.
And it's,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's not something that, you think about like, oh, that Aisha, she can't possibly be able to code.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, that's super cool. I mean, it's cool that like you are able to make a difference, you know, in that regard. So a little bit of an easier question. What do you do to learn right now? Like, what kinds of sources are you plugged into? Because I get that question a lot, and I actually find it's a hard question to answer because I'm just like, I don't know. I just kind of absorb things through osmosis, and they just come to me. I don't.
Yeah. So honestly, Treehouse is my like. If I want to learn something brand new, I've never touched it before. I'm like, what does Treehouse have on whatever subject?
That's right, folks. Just head over to teamtreehouse.com and no.
So a lot of that, I read a lot of blogs. I'm really interested in web accessibility, and so I read like anything that like Alice Boxall or like Marcy Sutton writes. They're both really awesome. Hayden Pickering. I'll just like search, learn blah, and like go run through a tutorial, like build something. Because I find that that's really the most helpful for me, is doing something with whatever I'm trying to learn.
Right.
And then from there, I can tweak it to, you know, be whatever I need it to be. You know, if there's like a small app that I want to try to build, I'm like, okay, well, I did this thing, and I think I can change, you know, these 3 parts of it, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I always try to tell our students to just build projects. Like, that is the best way to learn, because you're going to run into some kind of a problem, and you're not the only person in the world ever to have ever had that problem. Maybe it's possible, but highly unlikely. So, you know, I will just start Googling like the errors I'm having, or I'll Google for how to do something. And oftentimes there is some kind of answer out there somewhere. I always get really excited when an answer from the Treehouse community shows up, because I'm like, yes, you know, it's working. But yeah, I'll just Google, and that's how I feel like that's how I learn, is like when I'm actually building something and working through a real problem. So those are all my questions, but we have some questions from students in the Treehouse Tech Degree program that I wanted to ask to you. Actually, I will take this first one. It says, what kept you so motivated to continue the path through the tech degree without getting frustrated? Actually, I feel like that question is more about just motivation in general, but actually just kind of learning how to code. Like, I guess for me, I feel like, you know, overcoming some kind of programming problem is like the best feeling in the world. And that's what keeps me motivated, especially when, like, you know, you've been working on something for just hours and hours, or days sometimes, and you finally get it. You're just like, yes, I am the master of my universe, and I'm totally in control of this computer right now, right? That's a great feeling. So I feel like that's what keeps me motivated. But did you feel like you ran into, I mean, you must have, right? You ran into those challenges all the time learning how to code, right?
Yeah. All the time. All the time. And that's what I told my students all the time at Grand Circus, is there's not going to be a time where you're not like struggling to learn something. Right. Like, it's just going to be a different something. Like, the things that I struggled with, you know, 2 years ago are very, very different in terms of like complexity than the things I struggle with now. But that is just like part of the job, and it's fun. Like, when you finally figure out that thing that was troubling you for, you know, hours or days, it's like, I did it.
Yeah.
Like, it's that struggle, you know, it's really easy to feel like, oh my God, I'm so stupid. Like, why can't I figure this out? but then you figure it out.
Right.
And it's like, oh my God, I'm a genius.
Yes, I did it. But yeah, totally. I mean, that's how I feel like I stay motivated whenever I'm working on a project. It's just like that feeling of accomplishment. So the next question says, "Hi, Aisha.
Hello.
I'm on the front-end tech degree and really enjoying it. Thank you. But I'm struggling with trying to learn all the skills I might need. Learning to code is a challenge in itself, but there are so many other areas like Photoshop, design, typography, sketch, etc., that it can become a bit overwhelming. What would be your advice for prioritizing these skills, and what would be the most useful in trying to become a front-end developer?"
Well, I'm a terrible person to ask that question because I try to learn like a little bit of everything all the time, and it's terrible. Don't do that. Don't be like me. Well, we've already narrowed it down to front-end web developer, so that is helpful.
Right.
I think it really depends partly on where you live, sort of what sort of job you are hoping to move into once you're finished. So for people in Detroit, we teach Angular, and that comes out of a familiarity with what people are looking for in JavaScript developers in the area.
Right.
So honestly, doing a quick like localized search, or maybe several localized searches, and kind of figuring out what specific skills people in your area are looking for can be really helpful in narrowing down like, okay, what framework do I want to put some time into?
Right.
But I think from what I know about the program, starting off with just really understanding JavaScript as a language too is really important.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. Like getting down the fundamentals and understanding all of those underpinnings is what really helps kind of understanding the bigger picture. I mean, I think part of it too is just reading job descriptions. Like a lot of times you'll read a job description and it's like, you need, 20 years experience coding in Swift, which has existed for like a couple years,
Yep.
and a part of that is understanding how to read those job descriptions. I actually wrote a blog post about this. Maybe we can link it in the description or something like that. But yeah, reading some of those job descriptions are just kind of not realistic, and so part of it is learning how to filter those. Let's see. Another question is, of all the front-end technology languages that you learned, which of them do you see being applied the most in the industry, and which of them do you use the most on the whole on the job? Kind of a similar question, actually, but I feel like, like learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript as a front-end developer, like learning the languages is probably what's going to help most.
Yeah, for sure. The thing that I have actually used the most consistently in terms of like more specific technologies has actually been Gulp, like automating my tasks that are specific to me and my workflow. So that's kind of a more personal thing if you're not working on a team that has an established process, but just learning for yourself. But I found that super useful and applicable to a lot of different kind of styles of work.
Totally. Cool. I think we got time for a couple more here. This is a pretty good one. It says, if I don't have anything on my resume related to front-end web development besides the Treehouse tech degree and the GitHub portfolio, because they build about a dozen projects when they're going through the front-end web development tech degree. So if I don't have anything else besides those projects, how can I increase my chances of impressing the recruiter during the interview?
Okay. That's a great question. I would say that one, what I tell my students is that you want to show that you are hungry, and that you are ready to learn, and you want to learn, and you want to contribute to, whatever company that you are interviewing for. As far as, and that's, as far as in the interview, like things that you can say, things that you can kind of explain as, part of your background. Like, this is where I'm coming from. I went through this program. Like, I am so committed to learning and to like being what you need me to be. Beyond that, I would say, in terms of beefing up your portfolio, see what are some things that you can add to the projects that are already in your portfolio, having done the tech degree program.
Right.
And then beyond that, there are always, even if you don't have clients, you can look at a site and say, okay, well, that's pretty awful. I have learned that game stores have terrible websites across the board. I have yet to find one that was even tolerable.
Yeah.
And so one thing that my boyfriend and I joke about is like, I should just like redo 3 of them and just like let that be like.
I feel that way about websites for animal shelters. I'm like, these pictures are so cute, but this is like a 10 megabyte JPEG that's loading now, and you need help. I just want to like if I had a second lifetime to live, that's like all I would do is just like fix all of those.
I couldn't do it. I would just want all of the dogs.
But yeah, I mean, it basically. Like one of the things I like to tell students when they ask this type of question is to think about the other skills that you can bring to it that are maybe not tech related. Like if you're really good at sound design, or you play guitar, or you do video editing, or you're into surfing, or like whatever. Try to see if you can somehow focus on that vertical or bring those skills into play. Another good example is if you speak a second language.
Absolutely.
That's hugely helpful because you can specialize in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
As a result. So yeah, any kind of like additional skills you can bring into that are maybe not tech related might be really helpful.
For sure. And I think that's also like a barrier that people have or see to getting into the industry in the first place. It's like, well, I've spent 2 decades in finance. Like, what do I know about computers? How can I be a part of this? But I think from what I've seen in the students at Grand Circus, like they come from everywhere, and all of those professional skills are still going to come into play. Like you're still working with people,
right,
like at the core of what you're doing. And so I think that it's absolutely like possible for anyone with the time and the effort, or
So that's an excellent segue into this last question. So we've got 2 similar questions here. One says, is it possible to start a career as a web developer at 35 without previous IT experience? And then another question says, what are the job prospects or employability as a coder after 40? So, and I guess I can let you take that first.
Sure. Again, I'm gonna draw on my experience at Grand Circus. We had people from everywhere from like, I'm pretty sure we had students who were like 18 or 19, all the way up to like 60s, maybe more, maybe 70s.
Yeah, we have a few tech degree students that are, well above that age, and I mean, I feel like it's never too late to learn. In the tech industry, there tends to be this perception that you have to have been coding Neopets since you were 10 years old, but like that is completely false, because you said you were doing some of this stuff just back in like 2011, right? It's just a couple of years ago. So I think the real takeaway is that nobody was born a coder. Like you weren't born a coder. I wasn't born a coder. it took a lot of front page and Neopets to build up those skills over time.
For sure. It definitely takes time. I think that it is, I think it's important to recognize that, you know, in reality, there are additional difficulties when you're older and you're going to change a career. And that's, you know, in any industry. And it's unfortunate and it is unfair. But I think it's really key to understand that you are still capable of getting the job done and doing just as well as somebody who's coming at it when they're 20. Like, I think that being able to show confidently that you know what you're talking about, and like I said, are ready and willing and hungry to learn, like, that is going to go a really long way. And if you're running into trouble with people who are concerned about your age, then honestly, maybe that's not the right place.
Go somewhere else. Yeah.
Keep looking.
Yeah, I mean, I think it again folds back into the thing we were talking about before, how if you can bring experience from somewhere else to the tech industry, a lot of times that's really, really valuable because tech touches every vertical. Like, everybody needs a website. Everybody needs an iOS or Android app, right? So yeah, if you've been doing something for the first 20 years of your career and you're really great at that, that's probably something you can leverage in a new tech-related job that's going to be super duper valuable.
For sure.
Cool. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been super fun. Again, I'm Nick Pettit. I'm a teacher at Treehouse. You can check out the Treehouse Tech Degree at teamtreehouse.com/tech degree. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you real soon.
Bye.